laugh at this next part.
In a world of political correctness and cancel culture, two comedians have risen up to prove that with the right angle, anything can be funny. Live from Golden Ox Studios in Cleveland, Ohio, it's Steve Mers and David Horning. This is You Can't Laugh at That. Hi, everybody. My name's David Horning.
And I'm Steve Mers.
And we are joined today by the very funny John Armstrong.
Woo! Hi, I'm John Armstrong.
And he's just going to swoop in with some non sequiturs and sound effects throughout.
Ooh, look at you with the big words.
Yeah. I don't even know if that applies here.
It's like a Migos song. But no audio.
Yeah, I kind of wanted 2 Chainz to like incorporate some of his, because he's a smart dude.
Yeah.
I want to see him.
Surprisingly.
Yeah.
It's a lot of rappers like that. You hear them talking, you're like, wow, you talk as proper as I do.
He's got a PhD in psychology.
Yeah.
You know, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
We're not here to talk about rappers today. Typically, Steve and I, this is a show called You Can't Laugh at That, and typically we talk about taboo topics, things that would make your mother cringe.
And typically we laugh at that.
And yeah, we laugh at that. We find ways to laugh at it. And today we're going to take a topic that has been done to death by comedians from all sides of the spectrum.
It's a matter of how you approach it.
It's a matter of how you approach it. And so we're going to find new ways to laugh at relationships.
Yes.
And we have with us, I actually just worked with him on a show this week. And once again, he's got a bit on relationships that always kills. And it's a nuanced take on relationships. But first, before we kind of get into that, we're going to. He was happy enough to provide us with a clip.
Oh, really? We got to do the clip first?
Oh, we're gonna jump right into this bad boy.
Damn it, man. All right, let's
give us something to talk about. Yeah. So this is one of the first times you did comedy.
This was my first few months in, and it was a contest at Funny Stop. I was still, not that I found it, I was still looking for my voice and trying to see what I wanted to do as far as with comedy. And I was noticing a lot of the stuff with my girlfriend kind of came easy, and I would just be talking about it, and it would be something funny. So I was like, they say, tell the truth. You don't have, it's easier to remember. And it would resonate. And I was trying to walk a fine line, too, because, okay, so I'm in a relationship. My girlfriend happens to be white. No, I'm not the black dude who seeks out white women. It just kind of happened like that. But so there's so much stuff in that at first I didn't want to even deal with it because it came off as just kind of hacky. But at the same time, it's like, well, this is you. You're in a relationship. Why try to act like it isn't what it is? You know what I mean? Like, no matter who you date, white, black, male, female, there are always going to be certain underlying common things in there. So I just started putting that into some of the comedy. This first one at the Funny Stop, this is just about some of the things that I realized as far as subtle differences when you date interracially, especially when it comes to sex. Which, surprise, it really isn't that much different once you get the first couple, like, piss off your dad fucks out of the way. Once you get that out of the way, it's all the same, dude. Women and men are, unfortunately, I think that's the sad part about that. Everybody, men, women, like black, white, racist or not, would be kind of disappointed with is, unfortunately, we're a lot alike, man.
Oh, you don't say.
No, of course, yeah. I mean that sarcastically,
right,
but everybody, I'm not trying to be all kumbaya and shit. Like, hey, let's fucking hold hands and shit. But yeah, every man thinks they invented, let me put the tip in. We all do the same dumb shit. It's just whose filter it comes through and who's willing to, like, I guess as comedians, we're more apt to, like, hey, by the way, I was blah, blah, blah. So what are we going to get into this clip and then we're going to talk about the clip?
A little bit.
I started dating back in the 90s, like mid to late 90s, and a lot has changed since then. One of the things that I noticed that changed is back then it was hard to get a blowjob from a girl. Even girls nowadays are pretty freaky. You can't, but back then you couldn't get away with that. And I don't know if this is just me, this is just everything through my filter, but this is how it was in my life. And you know how they have that baseball analogy? How it's like first base is a kiss, second base you get the titties, like third base you get a little head, and then home you finally get sex. Well, back for me in the 90s when you were dating, especially a black woman, you wouldn't get no head at third base or even at home. As a matter of fact, getting head from a black woman back in the 90s was more like pitching a no-hitter. It was very rare, and it was epic if it did happen. Matter of fact, if you felt it happening by the 8th inning, it's like, don't say nothing to mess this up. Because you might jinx yourself. So, but throughout my, as I started dating some more, you start noticing differences in women, and the third base analogy did actually apply to white girls. Once you got to third base, that actually hook you up. As time went on, I noticed even that started changing. You didn't even have to be on third base. Pretty much, it got to the point to where getting head from a white girl was like being walked by the pitcher. They see you swinging at it a few times, and they're like, "Oh, he done tried a few times. Just go ahead and throw him the ball." It's more of a consolation prize at that point. So as I progressed through dating, I started noticing that like a black woman would give you sex before she blows you, but a white woman would blow you before she has sex with you. So I started realizing all the differences. And it's not that white women are more freaky or that black women are prudes. It's just that I think to white women they didn't care, and as far as black women went, they just don't do that one-sided street shit. Like, if you are showing up with them, they like, I'm gonna be fully engaged. Like, my baby mama used to hit me with that. She's like, I ain't just gonna be sucking dick. Like, we go at least 69. We going both ways. Ain't leaving here with a mouthful of cum. But I don't know. I think honestly now though, 2016 is obviously has equaled out because all these girls is freaks now. These lucky bastards running around. I wish I had it this way. It's like neck and neck. At this point, I think girls are equally as freaky because you can have a black girl and a white girl and they both do the same thing. It's to the point now where black girls are out here licking butt just so these Becky's won't out freaking in the bedroom. You ain't gonna get me. I'm keeping this man.
Jesus, that needs some polishing.
Hey, man, that's early though.
But dude, that was really funny.
That baseball analogy, man, the no hitter, like I mean,
that came to me one time in the living room because I was just joking around with my girlfriend and shit, and I was like, it was like, it didn't happen like that. It was rare. It was like pitching a no hitter, and then it was like, oh, light bulb.
That's comedic writing right there. Where you take it literally further. Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's walking the line. Kind of, what we're getting at with this podcast is. Some of it is like, oh, dude, this has been done before, and it's really low line. But if you can find a unique way through it, plus the underlying truth of it. I mean, okay, every joke doesn't have to be true. I mean, we can make shit up. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if you are coming from a true place and it's a new, unique take on this thing, I mean, that's why it resonates. That's why if you have a funny fart joke, it will always be funny, even though it's a fart joke, Yeah. Because certain things just resonate. So, and honestly, I was super new, and I was just, laugh at me. I said dick and pussy. So that's some of it. But it was that attack there was, it was a way of making an analogy with a white versus black, and then the baseball thing was a kind of a cool different thing because I'm not a sports person. I know surface level bullshit to talk to people.
Was that your first set?
No.
I was gonna say it was pretty good.
That was a couple months in, but that was honestly the first time I did that. The way I used to do shit is I would write stuff and I would always do new stuff, and I would write stuff, and then I still kind of do that, but I have my like go-to shit that I go to. I just have this thing where like we always see each other, you know what I mean? And then it's so many ideas that I want to explore, and we only get so much stage time,
right?
And so if I got a laugh off of something, then I put it in the corner. I was like, okay, I can use that. What else can get a laugh? And that's why things come and go. Like we were talking about the Star Wars thing. I I did that and I put it away, and I put it away, and then I just kind of played with it again on Wednesday at Winchester, and I want to do something with it because you got that last one of the trilogy coming out.
It's relevant.
And these nerds are going to be pissed off when it subverts their expectations.
Piss them off.
It's just funny to do. So, yeah, I think I tell a lot of people. I think me starting late in comedy helped because you just have more life experience. So
Absolutely,
it's not some special thing I'm doing, dude. It's just. I always bring this up because I'm a big rap fan. And Jay-Z just turned 50 years old, but he talks about that his first album came out when he was 26, which is still you're young, but for rappers, a lot of people come out 17, 18, 19, and he was like he'd been writing this album his whole life. So a lot of it that came out that felt so real, it was just like, it's just been sitting there. I've just been needing to spit it out, you know?
Yeah, you get these real life experiences. Well, I mean, you were talking about how it kind of came up in conversation with your girlfriend.
Yeah.
Do you find that when you're in conversation with people and you think of something funny in that comment, you say it in the conversation and they laugh, do you like mentally store that away? Like, okay,
yes,
I'm going to work on that.
Yes and no. Like sometimes that'll happen. There's another relationship joke I think we were going to get into, and that's how that came to be. But yes and no, because at a certain point, people, especially us as comics, you can feel somebody working on a bit in a conversation, so it's like, dude, don't guinea pig me.
You're a group of people. You're just like, clap if you've ever gone to like, Six Flags before. What the fuck is this guy doing? You can feel somebody monologuing you. So I don't want to be that dude. And so, but with us doing this, after a while, I mean, you do that. You're like, oh shit, mental note. How can I remember that? Like, so some of it comes up in conversation. Some of it is just stuff that you want to talk about. And then I have this thing, like I was talking to a comic about this. Like you'll know what you want to do on stage, but I try to be loose to a point to where there's a certain energy on stage to where you can develop a tag. Now, you don't want to depend on that. You don't want to just be on stage lingering like, oh, it's going to fall out of the sky. But you do want to be open to that idea and open to, like, if this certain type of energy comes, I can go in that direction, because that's when a lot of the truth comes out, you know? When everything is so rote, like verbatim, sometimes you can talk yourself into a corner. You know what I mean? So I try to have like a good 80% of it, yeah, but some of it is kind of like an outline. You ever hear how like, not that I'm anywhere like this, but like Larry David, he would talk about how he did Curb Your Enthusiasm, and he said it would be like, he has the outline and he has the premise and the arc of the story, but then he just lets the actors go in and then they just talk. That's how I do a lot of the sets. It's like, I know where certain jokes and punchlines are, and you know the arc of it, but then you allow yourself some room to do something while you're up there, and not even, and then it's not in this way of like, ooh, that's my creative process. I just found that that's where a lot of shit comes, because I used to, like with this set we just listened to, I would literally wake up, get a black cup of coffee, sit down and write. And that worked for a while, but then sometimes, and as we all know as writers, when you're sitting there trying to write something, it's like when you got whiskey dick and you're trying to get hard. Like the more you think about it, the more it's not coming. Right. You know what I mean? So I had to try to find a way to get into a space to where these ideas could come, and it didn't feel so forced. And in a way, it's that walking without a net thing. It's scary as fuck, but like, I mean, we got to go up there in front of people, and these different rooms that we're in and all this different type of energy that you get, no matter how good some of my like coffee table jokes would be, if I didn't have that muscle to be able to turn on a dime and redirect the energy, then that you're just there like flapping like a fish out of a boat. Yeah. Yep. And when they're not laughing, you're like trying to remember, like, what did I write next? I forget what I wrote next. Shit. Yes. That's my time.
Yeah. And of course, time is different for you up there. You know, it's like yeah.
That's, I mean, you keep going back to like, it's got to be truthful. Like, it's got to be like, make you laugh in the moment. And I mean, that's that's so important, man. A lot of young comics, a lot of new comics, open micers will go up and then they'll be like, "Oh, I'm in a relationship and she's a bitch." It's like,
yeah. It's like it's like, okay, but give me context of how she's a bitch. Or I noticed too, like, and this isn't necessary, and none of this is set in stone, but sometimes it's like maybe paint yourself as a little. I know you don't want to be super self-deprecating, but you do want to come across to a point to, if I am going to say my girlfriend's a bitch, it's not going to immediately turn people off. Like, well, this dude's an asshole. Like, if that's the first thing out of your mouth, that's why certain Donald Trump jokes don't work, even if you're talking to a room full of lefties, because it's like, hey, Donald Trump's a piece of shit. It's like, okay, well,
we know.
Let's dial it back and see, well, how did you come to this obvious conclusion? You know, it's like somebody yelling that the sky is blue. Like, okay, all right, we're all on the same page. Where are you going with this? You know,
we've heard this before,
right,
over and over and over again,
right. But I think relationship stuff is can be fun too, because no matter where you work, you can get it out, and you know there doesn't need to be that much of a backup, or you know you don't need to do a premise about how the dynamics of a relationship. We've all been there in some capacity, and then to like people who come out to the shows, a good portion of the audience is people dating. So and they're sitting there awkwardly, probably just argued in the car. So a lot of times that kind of loosens them up. You know what I mean?
All right, we'll go to your show.
Yeah. Half the time, the only reason the couples are staring at you because they're fighting and they're like passive aggressively ignoring each other. So if you could poke at certain relationship stuff, that I've heard that before, a set I just did, and then my girlfriend liked when you said blah blah blah, and they're both directly talking to me more than they're talking to each other. And I'm like, wow, I hope you guys make it on the car ride home. So it just makes it fun.
So funny though. I mean, but I don't have I'm in a relationship. I've been in a relationship about a year and a half, and I've had a couple like one-liners, but not like I don't have a premise that's just like, oh, this is hilarious. Like, not because it's never come to me like that. Yeah, and, like,
it's probably there, and you're just ignoring it. A lot of it's is the little shit. The one clip, if we get into it, the newer one I've been doing about how my girlfriend just leaves hair all around the apartment. That was one that partially came through a conversation. I was talking to somebody, and I started to like it because when I would do it, it would really resonate with the audience. But it wasn't a sex joke. It had to do with race in a way, but that was just a little underlying thing. And it felt good to have this thing that's so common, but people don't talk about it, and for it to feel, you get this visceral reaction, but it's not like, you know, I was fucking this bitch. You know what I mean? And that's and I'm trying to pivot out of that space to where every joke doesn't have to have either. Because I swear a lot anyway, and I talk about fucked up shit a lot anyway. So I don't want that to be my shtick, you know what I mean? And once again, it was just a truthful thing. It was just funny. It was one argument we were having. I remember I was going to clean the house, and I had to literally flip the vacuum cleaner over and cut all the hair out of it. It was like some fucking woogie in my goddamn vacuum cleaner, and I did that, and it was like, ooh, okay, it's clean. And then 2 weeks later, I had to do the same. And it's just this ongoing thing. And this girl has so much hair on her head, and I'm just like, what? Where is all this shit coming from? Yeah. And then when I told somebody about the shower thing, and everybody I know who was white or dating a white woman, it's like, yeah, my girlfriend does this shit all the time. She puts the hair on the wall. And I was like, oh, I think I got something there.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
Like all of my girlfriends have done that.
This is my first foray into this. So like black girls don't do this shit.
No.
They leave a note, love you.
In their hair.
Just the texture thing with black girls and their hair. Their hair don't come out like that, and if you put it on the wall, it just come out. Our hair is just thicker, dude. And then now the way a lot of girls are, with wigs and weaves and shit, they count every strand. They ain't letting that shit go.
So, is that a good setup for this next clip?
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
want to throw anything else in there before?
No, we could get
rock
into
it.
Yeah.
All right. This is from Hilarities about a month ago.
Yeah, roughly, maybe 2 months at this point.
Damn.
Since time is running.
So fast.
Yeah,
so fast. Yeah. So this is from John's half hour at Hilarities.
I'm in an interracial relationship. White women, I don't know how you all have hair on your heads. So much hair around my apartment. I vacuum up a wig every week. I'm not making this up. I asked her, I was like, do you have cancer? Are you going through chemotherapy? Like, what the fuck is this? And ladies, what is with the hair on the side of the wall in the shower? What is that nasty shit? The first time I saw that, I thought it was a dead cat on the side of the wall in my shower. What the hell is you doing in here, girl? It's like, well, John, I gotta put it on the wall, because if I don't put it on the wall, it's gonna get in the drain. Like, it's in the drain, bitch. You are, like, clogging up everything in here. Like a little top of horror feeling a boogie in here. Shut this down. It's crazy.
Yeah, there's more in there, but I was so, like, nervous because we were filming it. I was like, must march ahead.
Yes. Keep it moving.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But that was a way to poke fun at a certain part of a relationship that is common things, but things that don't get talked about that much. You know, it's just, to me, it's just fun. You know what I mean? It's we're all doing the same thing, man, and we're all trying to find ways to get jokes out of these life experiences. And then there's certain things that I know aren't my strong suit, which of course I have to get better with, but I can dissect, you know, certain parts of my life, you know, in a coherent way most of the time.
Most of the time. You also have a bit about choking that's hilarious too.
Yeah, I left that out of the recording because my girlfriend hates that joke because it's 100% true.
You did it the other night though.
Yeah. She
was there.
Yeah. That one. If we can get into that one, it was that one is just once again, sex and jokes. It's always going to be there. So it's like, how can I attack this in a different way? And it's actually happened when you, of course, as we all know, when you're in a relationship, you ain't like banging it out every day after, you know, years start going by, and you try to, you know, do shit to keep it new. And on this one particular time, we were having sex, and my girlfriend just happened to be on top, and I was just laying there, and she stopped, looked at me, and asked if she could choke me, and I said, yeah, and she started choking me, and it was everything but sex at that point, because I've never just laid there and like been choked, and she really choked the shit out of me, and it's like, all right. And then I started thinking about the girl's perspective every time I've tried to do this dominating thing, and I'm like, this is so stupid. It was just the dumbest thing. Like, but I'm like, if this helps you somehow, just. Yeah, like men don't need that. Like I'm gonna come regardless. But if this helps some masochist part of your brain, then fucking have at it, dear. But it was weird. It was new, and that, you know how it is. Like you guys are in your 30s. Like as you get older, you've kind of, you know, unless you start getting into, you know, Pornhub page 100, we've kind of tackled a lot of the basic shit with sex. So. To get choked, I was just like, wow, that was interesting. So of course, you know, anything like that, you're like, oh, let me throw this in and just see how it works. And that's the other thing too with some of these jokes. You don't want to just throw something in just for the sake of doing it, or just for the sake of saying, ooh, this will sound wild when I say this. It wasn't even so much a thing like that. It's just, you don't want to be another person on stage literally dry humping the stools saying, so I was fucking this girl, right? You know, like it's like it gets, yeah, it's very eye rolling. And racial stuff can get kind of I don't know, it can get hacky too. But once again, it's like, well, this is an aspect of it, so I'll address it, but how can I address it without it feeling like, you know, a priest, a nun, and a blah, 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 walk into a bar. You know what I mean? So how can we get our hands around this? So it becomes that. And it just makes it fun, man. You know, it actually some of it helps with relationship stuff because you just end up talking and you end up addressing things and you get to laugh at yourself. You don't take yourself so serious with shit. You know what I mean? Like as men in relationships, at least from my experience, I've been immature and jealous and like just, you know, every shitty thing that men try to grow out of. You know what I mean? So as you grow out of that, because there is no there. I don't think, you know, women don't become perfect women and we don't become perfect men, but you at least try to become self-aware, you know?
A little bit better.
Yeah, dude.
With each experience.
Hell yeah.
Now, well, I love the way that you add like nuances to your jokes about like being in a relationship, where you, as an audience member, like you almost forget about that's what you're talking about, because you there's a thread that you can kind of follow along with your premises. Like you start with the choking, like trying something new, and then you bring the race into it, and then you bring the police into it, and then it just becomes a totally different joke.
Always, arc. I say that a lot, and I'm still learning about it in story structure. And I know, Steve, you probably super know about this, like putting together like videos and stuff. But I just try to have things have an arc. You know what I mean? Because like. Well, and that's the other thing too, is I'm not good at like set up knockdown jokes. Like you're awesome with that, Steve. Like you're really good with that. I can't write a joke like that. I don't want to say can't, but that's not my strong suit. Mm-hmm. So I at least try to have my jokes have an arc to them, so you can at least feel like when you're coming into it, when you're into it, and then when you're coming out of it, you know. And even part of it is maybe not feeling it, because I do like to do a quick left turn. And like, whoa, how do we get there? But still, you can feel the evolution of the joke. Like, it's just not flat laying there. You know what I mean? That one joke that I did with it's a very crass joke, the Biggie joke, and then about the anal oral sex. But at the end of the joke, it ends up being a joke about atheism, and you know what I mean? And it's a hard left turn, and it's just I love doing that, because the other thing that I found with comedy is, part of it is a magic trick. It's a sleight of hand. Like you got them looking over here, and then you pull it around, and then they're somewhere else. And you don't do it to the point to where it becomes your shtick, and people are just waiting like, oh, John's about to pull the rug from under us. It's not necessarily just like that. You try to find a way not just to keep the audience engaged, but to keep yourself engaged. I'm sure y'all have had this where you're doing sets, and it's sets that we've done a million times. So I call it the out of body thing, where you're on stage, but like you're literally staring at yourself tell jokes. You know? So it's certain things I got to do to catfish my brain so that I'm still
catfish my brain.
Yeah, seriously, so that I'm still on stage engaging, because I hate that when it becomes this out of body thing, and you're just staring at yourself, and you're thinking about, okay, what am I do after this? And all right, I forgot to bring my weed with me. And while you're telling jokes.
Right.
Yeah, and it becomes stale. So
that's what happens to me a lot. I mean, you'll see that from me when I'm going through a period of like regeneration, or like, you know, I was doing it all this week where I was just like, I was clearly not into it, and I don't know. It
just becomes out of body, and you're like, how can I engage this? So even if you're not getting as many laughs, but to still be in it. Yeah. Because if you're not in it, what the fuck are we doing, you know? Right. I mean, don't get me wrong. Some stuff that we do, like if we're doing quick 5-minute sets and you're just trying to work on something, or if coincidentally everybody got up before you went on and you're like, okay, let me burn up these minutes real quick. But I get fading out with that. But if you're really just trying to be in the moment, it's like, I gotta be in this. What's gonna help me actually give a fuck about this joke, you know?
If I was in front of a new audience every day, like no comics whatsoever, I'd be a completely different comedian, because you get away with anything. Because you're just out there, and they've never seen you before. You have that blank slate impression that you can give. You can be anybody you want. But instead, I'm in front of comics all the time, and I'm extremely self-conscious about repeating things and seeming disingenuous to other comedians. And so that kind of really screws up my development. I could probably be a lot further along if I hadn't been doing that for years.
No, but like we were talking about, it's the same thing. That's where my keep trying to do new stuff came from. Because I'm like, okay, it's a room with 7 of us. I've told this joke to these guys like a million times, and then I got these jokes that I want to tell that I'm scared to. So let's just get that out there. Let's just see where this falls, because you already know what I'm gonna say if I don't tell these other ones. So
Yeah.
But what could be, it's like it's a late night Tinder hookup. Like who if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around, like it's just a way of getting material off, because it's so much shit to talk about. I just hate having stuff just dissipate and then it just dies in the corner. And you know how you'll have a thought and you'll like jot it down like shit, you know what I mean? And then you come back to it the next day, or you go to do it on stage and it doesn't have that energy that it had when you wrote it down. And you're like, I remember being really excited about this joke, and then you start doing it and you're like, this is the dumbest shit. like why am I? So I try to like keep that energy, so when you spit it out, you still have a love for it, or you still knew where you wanted to go with it.
Right.
So once you're doing it, it's just not this like oh well, guys, it sounded better when I was high at 2 a.m. You know, like that's where a lot of this shit comes from.
It's tough in a city this size, because you see the same people at like multiple times a week, and we're trying to work on the same joke, and you might get a laugh the first time, but then you never get a laugh again in front of those same people, and it's frustrating. But at the same time, like that challenges me to not necessarily write something new every week, but maybe add a different inflection or change a word or change the order. And if I can get a laugh on the same joke when things are flipped, like that's a win for me. Like Steve, your show, TikTok, if I can get a laugh on something that I've done there before, I consider that a win.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, getting a laugh at TikTok, especially depending on how the day is going and everything else, it's like if I can get something out of this, then there's something in there. Because we're like comics, we've heard it all. We're so jaded that if you can get us to even crack a smile or even a look up from our phones, you're like, oh shit, there's something in there. So that is the good thing about when you do open mics or you are performing in front of like a lot of your friends or a lot of comics. Because I know that becomes a thing comics say, don't perform to the back of the room. You know, don't perform to the comedians. But there's a certain level of wanting to do that, because even when jokes work on certain audiences, it's like dating an 18-year-old girl. It's like I'm kind of cheating. Like this is easy. They just don't know because they don't have the experience to know. But if I get the comics to laugh at it, you're getting people who've heard a billion jokes to laugh at us. So it's that tightrope of trying to come with an angle that's a little newer while not digging so deep that you dig past most people, and you're doing references to 20-year-old independent movies and shit.
Your jokes aren't niche like that, or if they're not inside jokes with the comics. Making comics laugh is okay, because I think that's just you're catering to the toughest audience, and if you can make them laugh and win them over, then you're doing something right, as long as it can translate to a non-comedic comedy.
You're not just writing for comedians. You're not talking about chunks and bits, and
that will ruin you.
Yeah.
You guys want to hear my bacon bit? It's like,
not anymore.
Yeah,
I think that was it. That's as deep as that can go, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like I work in service industry, and like people who I work with are always like, do you talk about us, or you should talk about how it is here and talk about, and I'm like, there has to be so much setup behind that by the time you get to it, it doesn't. That show that we just did with the service industry thing, a lot of those jokes I had and I had tried to do, but you only get so far with them, because unless you're in the service industry, they only resonate but so much. You can do surface level stuff because we all work and people know how it is to work, but if you're not in it, do I really want to like take the time to build up the premise of, okay, you have to understand that most bosses in this are just perverts and they don't know what they're doing, and a posse is a little thing that you do to ring in an order, and like if you're Susie working at a fucking insurance office, they don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
You got to 86 the joke, you know?
Yes, yeah, 86.
That's just a number to me.
Well, why would you forget to put an order in? I mean, yeah.
It's not that hard of a job.
So, yeah, certain stuff that it becomes a little like you think it. People on the outside looking in think it's easier to do, but it's like it's. I guess the art of doing this is making it look effortless. You know, but you're literally up there doing the duck in water shit to where the duck just looks like it's sitting there, but the legs below water are just kicking away like, what the fuck, you know? Don't notice me flailing here. You know.
Yeah. I mean, you do have to play to the room to an extent. I mean, obviously. I mean, that whole room, everybody but like 3 people were in the service industry in that room.
Yeah. That helped. That show. That helped a lot.
Yeah. 'Cause, I mean, you did the first 10 minutes. It almost felt like it was just crowd work and you were just riffing.
Well,
how much of that was...
A lot of it, like I said, a lot of it was stuff that I already had. Yeah. But it was going to my point earlier, it was the outline. I went in with the outline. I knew where certain punchlines were, but the way that room felt, because I had never did it before, and it was so open aired, and then it had the bar off to the side with people talking. I'm like, I know I can lose these people if I don't keep the energy a certain way. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I was like, I know what I want to get into, and the more they respond to this, the more we'll keep going down this road, and then if it starts quieting down, then we'll make a turn too. And then that's the thing. I knew a lot of people in the room, my girlfriend and other friends that happened to heard my shit before, and we had been through this, so it's like, how can we address this and readdress this with it still sounding fresh? And that's the other thing too. When you do comedy in front of like friends and different like people especially people you know, or I hate being that comic that's there and like you're staring into that person's eyes and you're, hey man, but like it makes it awkward for the person, because I've had people do that to me, you know.
Oh, that's the worst.
Yeah. And it's one thing. Okay, we see each other, we notice each other, you acknowledge each other, but if you're in my eyes for more than 2 seconds doing stuff, it just starts feeling weird. Or even if they're not a comic but it's your friend, it's like it just makes it awkward for them. I recently heard something. They were talking about bombing, and I never looked at it from this level, but they were like, part of the reason bombing sucks so bad is because the audience feels the awkwardness too. It ain't just you up there dying. Like they're kind of squirming in their seat too. So when you got that weird energy and you're just going in at them and staring at them like, yeah.
It's vicarious cringing that they feel.
It's the human experience.
Right.
You know that thing you said about staring? Oh, this ruins a set. Like, comics will start telling jokes to me, and it's like, guess what? I'm not going to laugh now. You're making this weird. I'm not paying attention to you now because you're staring at me.
Or you have to look away, or you laugh, and then you look up, and then, like, it's like when you're, you ever do that thing where you either have your headphones on in public or you're reading in public, and then somebody comes up and starts talking to you, and you'll look up to acknowledge them, but you'll immediately look back away like, okay, it's just so you know, I'm doing something else. Stop trying to constantly engage me.
Right.
And the fucked up thing is the more you try to break that, the more they keep coming back to like, but no, I'm not done digging into your brain. Like I don't stare at somebody this much during sex, dude. Stop looking at me. It's so awkward.
I mean, going into like you have a relationship with the audience. Like when you get up there, you have to remember there's like looking at the audience as one person.
Yeah,
versus
as an entity. Yeah. That's why the starting off at the Funny Stop, we've all done that room. Like the first time I went up on stage, it was not what I was expecting because I couldn't really see the audience because that light shines in your face and it was very disorientating. Mm-hmm. And I used to call that like the being in the tunnel because you're just in the tunnel and you're there. And you're kind of telling jokes into the void and you're waiting for this feedback. Yeah. The Pete train. Get off my stage.
The Pete train.
Getting political.
This is our weekly segment where we rip the funny stuff.
But I love the funny stuff, dude. I'm glad I started there.
But I don't.
But I am not connected to any of the comments or any of the other comments
this is not
on this program. But back to the light thing, that actually started helping me though, because in a way, if I was nervous or if I did know people in the audience, I love the fact that I can't see your face, There's none of that eye contact shit. There's none of that. So then when I started doing different stages and you can see people and you can directly look in people's eyes, it became a thing to where I kind of blankly stare out and I'm staring at you, but I'm staring at you collectively as a whole, not like... And now I've got to the point to where now I kind of want to see people and acknowledge people a little bit, but to be able to kind of a quick like glance and then keep it moving. Yeah. But you don't want to be. It's just you're already standing over them.
It's like this is what I call the line. There's the line, the eyesight line.
Right.
Keep your eyes down. Don't. A lot of comics. I mean, you can get away with this if you're like just fucking on fire and shit. Like for instance, Jeremy Shear, he'll always look at the ceiling, be like, I just and he'll like shake his head like this, and I just he does that a lot. But it's like, that's his way of recalling what he's talking about. But it's like you really should, if you want to be more effective with certain. Every comedian's different, but you want to look at people.
Yeah. There's
but not too intently.
There's only a certain, like you said, there's only a certain type of, like a Stephen Wright or Mitch Hedberg. You could get away with just kind of staring into the void. But even then, theirs were kind of more dry with Stephen Wright, and then just kind of one-liners with Mitch Hedberg. So you could get away with that because a one-liner staring into somebody's eyes is just a psychopath.
Yeah.
If you're delivering one-liners and you just go across the room, everyone you're in one person's eyes. So I was at the gas station, and then next person. So I was walking down the street, and like it's like a school shooting with eye contact.
It's all about what your jokes are about. If you're trying to engage with them on relatability, then you need to be looking at them. But if you're doing jokes, you don't have to be looking at anyone because they don't need to make that connection.
And the honest to laugh is on that one guy who just got his cheese fries.
I'm trying to eat my fries, but I don't think I should look away because you're looking at me. It's just it's like you earn their trust and then you lose their trust if you keep staring.
Yeah, it's like Terry McGee.
It's
guilting
important.
me into laughs.
It's important to make eye contact, but not maintain it like the whole time.
Yeah.
I mean, what's
all about the
rule?
fourth wall.
Yeah, you want to make eye contact. Like when you're having a conversation with somebody, you want to make eye contact with like one eye. If you're looking both eyes, it's like, that's weird. Stop. Yeah. I'm uncomfortable with this conversation.
No one maintains
you lose
eye
their
contact.
Trust. Right.
I just had a job interview where I was doing that, and I had to force myself to look away.
Don't blink.
Quick segue backstory. We can edit this out, but my son's autistic, and I remember getting him diagnosed when he was like 2, almost 3, and that's when his eye contact first started going away. And like as a parent, you immediately notice that.
Yeah.
Like immediately, and then so we go get him tested, and sure enough, he has autism. And then we're going down this list of stuff like, does your child do this? Does your child do this? Does your child do this? And I'm like, yes. But not only yes, but like, I do that. I do that. I do that. Like, he's got a lot of my tics just turned up. And I remember being younger, and like, and this is probably common for people, especially comics. But I was awkward and shitty, and I had to teach myself how to look at people and how to look people in the eye. But it got to the point to where I would look people in the eye. Then I had to teach myself to break away. And I was remembering that I was at this job interview the other day, and we're sitting there talking, and you don't want to be not engaging, but I'm just like, I can see the back of this dude's skull right now because I'm like just staring into his eyes. So it became a skill set not only to learn to look, but okay, now look away, John. You're
Once we start
person.
talking about eye contact, then I start hyper focusing on it, and I'm like, I can't. Okay, it's like you got to go on autopilot because
it's like staring in the mirror, and everything. Your face turns into Picasso. It just turns into shapes, and you're like, this isn't even a thing anymore.
And then all I see are your eyes. You're just eyes.
Right.
All right. So moving along with the podcast. So part of this too is like how different comics are able to pull this off. More known comics.
Yes.
As far as with relationships in particular, or just with broaching subjects that, like you said, have been kind of overused
It's
or
just
seemingly
their fresh
overused.
take on it.
Yeah.
I mean, Yeah, like you have a fresh angle on it, and that's what's important because so many people attack it from the same point of view, and it's like we've heard this 100 times, especially newer comics. But when you get somebody like, for example, Chris Rock, who I mean, he's been doing this for 30 years, and I don't know, 20, 25 years probably. It's probably more accurate.
30 plus. It's like it's 2019. He started in what was it, 86?
Okay, yeah.
87.
God damn, I keep forgetting it's,
yeah.
it's 2019. I'm like, it's 2009.
Eddie
still,
Murphy
1970s.
saw him in a club in New York.
Yeah.
And he didn't discover him, but he kind of helped him, and eventually that's how he got tied into doing Beverly Hills Cop and Boomerang. He was just in tiny little parts with that, but then of course with Eddie Murphy being an alum of Saturday Night Live, I'm sure that helps Chris Rock parlay into that, and then even then he was just this big guy who knew like that skinny little black kid who did like the white man cam and all these other weird things. Like his breakthrough to me was that Bring the Pain. That was 96. And I remember because after he was gone from Saturday Night Live, and this is after New Jack City and everything else, he kind of was just off to the side somewhere, and people weren't really thinking about him. And I remember watching that Bring the Pain, and that was such a pivotal moment in comedy. That was one of the reasons I always wanted to do comedy. But I mean, of course, you don't tell people this when you're young. Like, you ain't gonna never do that shit. But it was just such a watershed moment in comedy, and like that joke that he does about about OJ, like I don't think he should have killed her, but I understand. And that famous niggas versus black people, like he approached shit that people had in their head but nobody ever put together, and to have the balls to say that. I honestly, like, I have a joke about that, like with OJ and Nicole. Like, I thought OJ was innocent. Most black people did, because we're just part of it was a reflexive thing. Because so many white people, I was just like, why? I mean, people get killed all the time. Why do people care about this so much? And then you could feel kind of the racial undertone. I think not we all, but a lot of people inserted themselves into that. So it wasn't even about this poor woman and guy getting killed. It's about, black people being too overly violent, and then for black people, it became how white people are so racist, and this guy's not going to get a fair trial. So when he beat that, it was like a victory for us, but it had nothing to do with Nicole and Ron Goldman. But then when the way he did the joke, when he broke it down relationship wise, to where this is a guy who is married to this woman, and then he's paying all this money for alimony, and then she starts to date this other guy, and and then you quickly realize how a man who's a football player with a history of domestic violence can snap and kill somebody, and you're like, oh, that's how that happened. And to be able to do that and put it into a joke, that was genius to me. Yeah, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it was mind blowing. Like, how did you just take something so whatever the fuck? And that's one of the things. A joke. If we don't have to, but the OJ Trump joke that I have, that always works, and it works in front of like white conservative audiences. But it's because that's what I found with how Chris Rock did some of his jokes. Is if there's an underlying truth, even if you're not politically on my side, you'll laugh. And to me, that's amazing. Yeah. Like, it's just, I love that.
It's that sleight of hand you were talking about.
Right. Like when you don't see it coming. If we don't get into it, the joke that I have that's kind of close to it is basically how Donald Trump is not the best president, and if the white people who admitted that if the white people who voted for Trump could admit they messed up, then black people will finally admit that OJ did it. And it's that always kind of gets a laugh, because it lets you know that in the back of our mind we're all just being tribal with this. This isn't even about what's happening. This is about people not want to concede anything to the other side.
Yeah.
And then the tag that I got onto that joke, which kind of had been done, but it was a tag I did on stage, so it felt organic, so I just kept it. But it was like, okay, so we'll admit that OJ did it, and then I go back in 1994, I was 15 years old, and I thought OJ was innocent, just like most black people until a few years later when I was in my first real relationship, and I was like, oh, he killed that bitch. And it was like, and it's that same thing to where once again, back then I didn't really have the knowledge of how relationships work, how a man's rage works, our jealousy, and let alone like what we start to find out about CTE and how that just ruins your brain. It's one of those things to where you get a laugh because there's an underlying truth in there. We're not murderers, we're not whatever, but you see how a person can come to this conclusion. Yeah. And it's like, fuck, that's funny.
Yeah. Bring them with you on that. Back to Chris Rock. We're not actually doing the one that the joke that you were talking about.
Well, it's through the beauty of editing, it won't matter.
I mean, you made a lot of good points. I mean, that's it plays into it. It fits the theme. I mean, we're not heavily editing this.
Gotcha.
Just the parts where I'm like, it's not playing.
Where's the button?
Hold on, listen to us. Try to fuck a coconut. All right. So here is this is from his newest Netflix special. Yeah.
People shitted on this one. I like this one.
I haven't seen it.
I hate when people shit on comedy albums. It's like it just wasn't for you. Like it's just like music.
Man,
some people found it funny. Obviously,
like his older stuff.
Yeah, fine. Listen to his older stuff. It'll be there for you.
And once again, that one we were just talking about, the Bring the Pain, his first one. So many people shitted on that because it wasn't like how a lot of 90s black comedy was. It was people now would call it too woke. You know what I mean? Or too political. Or I'm being surface level, not everybody, you know what I mean? But it didn't have that Def Jam Kings of Comedy feel to it. You know, he didn't have on some big like Steve Harvey suit, not to shit on Steve Harvey, but it didn't have that kind of black church call and response. You do have some of that because Chris Rock actually, I've read a lot of like comedy shit. His I think it was his grandfather or father was a preacher, and he says his pacing of the stage comes from that because he tries to fill the whole stage, and that comes. So, and a lot of black comedy comes from the church. It's a very call and response. Mm-hmm. Like when I do mostly black rooms or like a big black room, like improv, like you feel that, I'll still be me, but you still do have to have a little more of that call and response energy because the first 3 to 5 minutes in any show, but particularly in a black show, is just getting them on your side. That's what John Bruden talks about this.
Yeah.
Like some of it, you don't have to, but you gotta be a little loose or riff for a minute, just kind of to get them on your side. Because first of all, the level of comic I'm at, I'm not the headliner, so they're not there to see me. So a lot of times they're ordering shit, or they're not thinking about you, or they're on their phone or whatever. So you have to find a way to engage, and it's like this slow build of it's kind of like a foreplay thing. Like it's not in yet, but we're taking our time, and then when you got them, then you go in.
Yeah, you can't go in raw.
Yeah,
you can't.
No,
and if you do, there'll be consequences.
Yeah, I bombed the first time in front of a mostly black audience at Funny Stop. It was like a fundraiser.
Yeah.
And then it was like, I don't know. It was at the beginning of the summer. Pete. It was supposed to be Dave Landau. Yeah. But Pete got the date wrong. He said I could come and do a guest set for Dave Landau, and it ended up being I
meant Dave Jackson.
Yeah, get up there. And so Pete was like, "You want to do 5? You go do 5. Just talk to the producer or whatever." So I talked to the producer of the show, and he put me up. So I was like, "I'm gonna win him. Like I'm gonna win him over this time. I'm gonna come back, and I'm gonna And I actually did a pretty good job. Yeah. But the producer of the show. I think Rodney, maybe. I think.
Kaysen?
Yeah. He was like, "You're funny, man, but you need like more energy."
Yeah.
And then so
Yeah, that little play around at the beginning.
Yeah, but I mean that's what I did. I did the whole the breach baby thing, and again, like I don't know. We won't go into my jokes because that has nothing to do with what we're talking about today.
But it's still relevant just as far as just different sensibilities, and we're all essentially saying the same thing, but how to get them to hear you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I did that joke, and then I heard something, and then got laughs, and I heard some lady like she laughed a second time, and she goes, and then I just heard her go, "That's why you so big headed."
Oh my god,
that's the other thing too. Like rooms like that, like it builds up that muscle of being able to clap back.
Yeah.
Cause yeah, okay, you don't want to respond to every little thing, but at the same time, if there's random darts being thrown and you just keep walking into the breach after a while, it's like,
Yeah, I was like, well, that's why I'm a comedian.
Yeah.
And then I got her laugh again. But
Nice.
it went well. Anyway, let's set, this has been the longest setup for a clip.
Hey, dude, editing, man.
Yeah. This is from his most recent special on Netflix. I'll cut it off at some point, but here we go.
Love hard or get the fuck out, okay? You hear me? I'm telling you right now. If you're in a relationship, all you should be doing is fucking and going places. That's all you should be doing. Having sex and traveling. Fucking and going places. You should be coming and going. That's all you should be doing. Okay? People say, oh, relationships are tough. No, they're not. They're only tough when one person's working on it. Mm-hmm. That's right. 2 people can move a couch real easy. One person can't move it at all. That's right. If you're in a relationship, let me try to help you right now. Okay? I'm trying to fucking help you. Okay? Okay. First rule 1. Stop competing. It's not a fucking competition. That's right. Her success is your success, and your success is her success. Stop competing. Stop it. Okay? Number two, okay? There is no equality in a relationship. It's like, we equals. No, you're not. You're both there to serve. You are in the service industry, okay? That's right. When you're in a relationship, you're in a band. You're in a fucking band. And when you're in a band, you have roles that you play in the band. Sometimes you sing lead, and sometimes you're on tambourine. And if you're on tambourine, play it right. Play with a fucking smile. Because nobody wants to see a mad tambourine player. Right, if you gonna play tambourine, you play that motherfucker right. You play it with your ass, like tambourine, motherfucker, tambourine. Tambourine, motherfucker, tambourine. Tambourine, motherfucker, tambourine. Play it like Tina Turner.
Like, he's preaching about about the right way to be in a relationship, but he takes such a fresh angle with it. Like,
I love that, and the way things are now, everything thinks that everything has to be this 50-50 thing, this egalitarian thing. Which, yeah, you have to have respect and everything, but as to his point, it's never just the way life is. It's never equal like that. Me and my girlfriend, roughly, if I have a good week, make the same amount of money. But right now, she's a little heavier into the money making than I am, but we still, we split bills evenly. But like you said, like if you're taking on a lesser role, like take on that role and not be spiteful about it. Don't be a dick about it. You know what I mean? And it's being able to walk that line that makes a relationship work, and not just that, with friends too. As like, man. Dude, like, as we progress through this comedy thing, and like some of us like will get this, or like, I heard you were on that movie, or then it's like, or shit, you producing this show, or oh, John got to record this half. Like, we all have our like spurts here and there, but if you lean on like, man, how come that person got this? Like,
yeah,
your time's gonna come, or this is just how this is now. But yeah, but I love that. That's why I love his takes on things, because there's ways to get to conclusions without, like, everything just isn't this equal horse race, and sometimes things just are what they are. It's just a very pragmatic way of looking at shit.
Life
which
is
probably
messy.
what most comedy is anyway.
I mean, life is messy. It's imperfect, and that's why comedy exists. Like, if it was perfect,
Yeah.
if it was this 50-50, 100-100, like, there wouldn't be anything to laugh about there. It would
Yeah.
be too, it's too perfect. Like, those imperfections where that comedy comes up.
I heard a guy talking about us as humans. The reason we have humor is because we're so self-aware. We're aware of our death. We're aware of a lot of pain and just things that you have to deal with. Just being human, and humor is our way of just adding levity to all this, because there's just so much tragedy that you deal with and that you have to deal with, and this is just our way of coping with it, because that is the old joke, what comedy is, tragedy plus time,
Yeah.
But it's a coping mechanism.
And that's why the premise of relationships will never get old if it's done right, because like you were saying earlier, the people in the audience are on dates. They just got in a fight in the car, and now they're there, and a comedian's doing jokes about relationships, and it's like, oh, you do that, or oh, I do that. Like, it works.
And that's the greatest thing too, especially if you're that white comedian in front of a black audience, that black comedian in front of a white audience. Like, when there's seemingly going to be some differences, and when you hit something and it ends up resonating with most of the people, even if you're a straight comic and there are gay people in the audience, they're like, fuck, I do that too. Because I feel that sometimes, and I'm sure you felt that, going on mostly black shows. Like sometimes if I'm at a mostly white show and you come out, once you get to a point to where you can kind of feel the energy in the room, like when you step out and when you can feel like, oh, it's black comic, and sometimes the first laughs in a white room, they'll give you laughs just because it's that weird, like, I want to laugh at the black guy energy. You know what I mean? It's that weird energy, you know what I mean? So sometimes it's not until you get into a good joke that's either relatable or that you dissect something, or that that sleight of hand, you just give them that left hook that they weren't looking for, and then when you get that laugh out of them, then they trust you, then they're on board. But before that, it's either, I call it the hand cross thing. You get that with certain audiences, or you get just too much leeway where it's it's like, okay, all right. Yeah, that's that. I compare that to it's like sex. It's the girl who needs like 1,000,000 minutes of foreplay versus the girl you just touch and she, oh my god, and just shake. It's like, okay, calm down. I didn't really do anything, but I appreciate the energy. But yeah, you're making me feel weird now.
You're overdoing it.
Yeah, Stop. I've felt that. I've seen that with like at Grog Shop with black audiences with white comics, and the white comic will be like just okay, and they'll kill. And you get that at mixed shows a lot of times. It's just sometimes it's so different that whatever that person's doing is just, it's either some nervous laughter or it's, oh, I ain't never heard no shit like that, or sometimes it's like what Dave Chappelle was talking about, what happened with his show. It feels like they're not laughing with you, they're laughing at you, kind of thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? You can just feel the laughs,
Yeah.
And you're like, this joke, even if the joke kills, it doesn't kill like that. Like, you're laughing at something else right now. You know what I mean?
What did I do?
Yeah. And that, of course, that's us being comics, being in our head. But you start to know, especially if it's a proven joke, you start to know where it's like, okay, if it didn't work, maybe the inflection of my voice I didn't do right. But when they're just rolling on the ground, you're like, okay, go.
What happened here? What happened here? A lot of relationship material you use, like it's like a negative spin on it, like complaining about the other half, and that's why I like that bit, is because he kind of gives it a positive spin. And then this one, this is a New York comedian. His name's Ted Alexandro. He's been doing it forever. He's hilarious, and he talks about, he has this whole bit about his fiance, like this love story about how. They dated, she broke up with him, went overseas, and then she comes back and texts him, and he's like, I saw the area code, and I was like, guess who's back? Like, but he has a bit, because there's a big age gap between them, about, like, he's in his late 40s and she's in his I think it's in this bit. So I'm gonna play this because
Well,
I
if
think
he
this
doesn't
is
say it,
such a-
what is the age so we know?
He's late 40s, she's early 30s,
Okay.
and so I think he does say it. But I listened to this last night, and I've listened to this a few times because it's such a well crafted joke. I'll just let it happen. Just let it play.
So we reconnected again. It was beautiful. There was an age difference, and there still is. That's how math works. But it feels like less now because time has gone by. We're both older. Like if I took her to my high school prom, I would have been pushing her in a stroller. Like, no, trust me, guys. I have a good feeling this is going to work out. Hey now, don't dream it's over. It helps her sleep. Take home to do the one Oh. She is in her very early 30s, and I am in my late 40s. They say a woman's sexual prime is her 30s, so she is in her sexual prime. And I am not. I'm past my prime. Like, do you remember when Shaq played for the Celtics? That's me. He didn't look like himself anymore. He had a hard time getting up and down the court. Some nights he was really an embarrassment. And I bet there were nights where Shaq's teammates got very angry at Shaq and said, like, Shaq, do you even want to play with us? Do you have any passion for the game anymore? Do you care? And I'm sure Shaq was like, no, guys, it's not that at all. I love you. It's just that I'm a little older now. It takes me a little longer to warm up. Maybe if you could just fucking be a little patient. Shaq probably said to them. And I just think it was very unfair of Shaq's teammates to treat him like that. He was a legend. He had done a lot in the game. He deserved better. And if you look back, Shaq had some really good games for the Celtics. Not every game, but on some nights he looked like the Shaq of old, and I just wish his teammates could have appreciated that instead of harping on the nights that he had difficulty performing. I feel for Shaq is what I'm trying to say. The older you get, and the
That's enough. It's such a good analogy.
I love that, and I love how he like keeps going, and you know what the obvious that he talks about, but he keeps it in the basketball analogy. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a really well written joke, and I love how the audience at first is like, "That's funny," and then as he keeps going, they're like, "Oh, you're talking about your fiance."
Yeah,
got it.
Yeah, just the build and the build. Yeah, I love that. I like that too. That whole like to his thing of like women, their sexual peak in the 30s. I have a theory, man. Like that's bullshit. I think through the handful of women I've slept with, I think honestly with women, they just become comfortable in their 30s. You know what I mean? I don't think it's necessarily a chemical thing. The thing I noticed when I was younger, when you're in your 20s and then having been a 30-some-year-old, still fucking girls in their 20s, like the thing you notice is young girls, like they're go. They have an A for effort and blah, blah, blah. Like, and they say they're, hey, I'm freaky and I'm this and I'm that. But when they get in their 30s, they're finally fucking the way men fuck. They know how to fucking leave. They're not trying to hang out. They know how to come. They want to come, and they fuck to come. And then, or if they've embraced things that they like doing, you know what I mean? They lean into it. If they like sucking dick, they love doing that. But if they don't, they'll let you know. But they're just very more. So I don't even think it's a chemical thing. I just think a lot of the pressures on being this sexual being in their late teens, 20s, it morphs into I'm finally know who I am as a sexual person. I know what I like to do, you know? And as guys, our dicks are just hard all the time. So we're just trying to fuck when we're young, you know? So
They've found their voice is what you're saying.
Yes.
They've gone up enough times. They've done enough open mics and tried to not be themselves and be somebody else. Like, oh, I think this will work. You know? And then it just doesn't feel right. And then after enough repetitions, they get up there. They're like, all right, this joke works. This joke doesn't.
Yeah.
Let's keep
my armchair analysis.
I know how to get laughs now. I know where the laughs are going to come.
There's a scientist somewhere like, actually, the serotonin and dopamine in the woman's brain doesn't. Like I said,
if there are scientists listening to this podcast,
they're like, that's not how it works. I've never had sex.
And now we're gonna have to do an episode about scientists fucking.
Scientists fuck. That's all. Like if you're in Antarctica, man, that's all you can.
That's
do.
a taboo topic.
Yeah.
No one talks about
Cold
the
outside,
scientists.
You can't do shit. You waiting for that ship to come back and give you supplies, and it's just you and that fucking lab tech. Hell yeah, they fucking. You ran out of alcohol and weed months ago. Like, yeah.
I won't tell if you won't.
Yeah, I'm fucking.
We're in Antarctica.
Basically, a bunch of band geeks and shit. Like, I've
back for that episode.
I've had sex with a couple band geeks, and that American Pie shit is through my limited experience is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Truth and comedy, man, and I think that's what we keep coming back to with this is that if you're gonna do relationship jokes, don't stretch for the joke. Don't like start from a place of truth and then go from there and then build on that. Like if it's in a conversation, it makes
considering it's just so relevant that it's gonna be something you want to write jokes about. So as long as you have your own unique perspective, it's fine.
That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Is it truthful to you as a writer?
Yeah.
I just heard something interesting too. It was Trevor Noah. He was talking about he got to work with Dave Chappelle, and he was saying he was it's Dave Chappelle, so he's like, what am I even doing here? You're opening up, but of course everybody's here to see Dave and blah blah blah. And he said Dave just kind of gave him a little tidbit of info, and he was like, look, man, like don't worry about being funny. You're already funny. You know what I mean? He was like, just be interesting. And that really kind of resonated in my head, like especially when we're in the middle of punchlines and like we're talking about doing relationship stuff. Sometimes if it's dry or you're searching for that tag or you're just up there and you're not necessarily killing, if you could be engaging and interesting, that's kind of helped me through a lot of shows. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not exactly like whatever, but for whatever reason, people are still listening. And if you got that, then that dude, that's a big part of it. That once again, it's a counterintuitive thing that it, but we're always thinking to be funny. You're not sitting down with a piece of paper like, how can I be interesting? You know what I mean? It's not like that. But I found that's a big deal. Being interesting, being likable. It was this other thing I heard, which I've said this before, but it was so profound. Steve Harvey talks about this. Once you learn how to make them laugh, then to learn how to live in the silences and learn how to bring it down. And like that's another one that's like a super big deal. Like but then bring it down and then kind of let it float at sea level for a minute and then slowly kind of bring it back up. And at that point, you're just being a conductor. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's a whole new part of it. So once again, you're not on stage like looking at yourself do your laundry list. You're not doing this out of body experience. You're in it with the audience, like you all are having. That you're on this journey, and it ain't gonna always be like that. Because when you do enough shows, work becomes work, Yeah. Even porn stars, I don't feel like going to work today, Yeah. So eventually everything becomes a job, but
I gotta fuck again.
Yeah.
Must be nice.
So yeah, but to be able to get into those spaces, that's what helps these jokes and what we're talking about today, relationships in particular. Just keep it interesting, because like the sex stuff is obvious or the certain other stuff, but yeah, if you could just engage people, yeah. And then when you get people's minds working like that Shaquille O'Neal joke is so funny because you're literally picturing Shaquille in that green jersey flat on his feet, like he's not like doing anything, and then contrasting that with a man in his late 40s who's like, all right, honey, we'll make love, but
I need the icy hot.
Yeah. I'm not nailing you to the back of the headboard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we're putting in enough work for you not to get on Instagram and stalk your ex after we're done.
Because you guys know what that real magic, like what you were saying just before that, was the real magic of comedy for me is when you really are engaged with the audience. They're like howling, laughing, and you are looking at them, and you're relating, and the joke is really funny. Everything's working on all cylinders. That's where comedy for me is like optimal.
Yeah, that's when it gets into that realm of that rock star shit. That better than sex shit.
Yeah, you're a magician, you're a conductor, and you are relating. You are in a relationship with the audience.
It's energy, man. That transfer of energy, like just being able to feel the back and forth, and the jokes grow on stage when you do that. Like you'll come up with something, or it'll get condensed. That thing we were talking about the other day, we were hanging out at Hilarities, and he was talking about how a comic does a joke, and I was talking about that rule of two. It was Chris Rock I had heard that from. I remember that with that clip that we were listening to, because it was, for some reason, if you say things twice, it'll resonate with an audience. You'll say it, and then they'll just be there, but then you'll say it again, and just I don't know,
You've created a pattern now.
Right. Yeah, and
up.
human beings, pattern recognition is the way our brains work, So just to put that in somebody's head, and then they're like, oh, this guy is funny.
Yeah.
I'm not just waiting for my friend to go up.
Yeah.
When's Luther going on?
We came here for Luther. All right.
I really want to take a pee break.
So at this part of the podcast, like, we kind of do it a little bit backwards. We introduce our guests at the very end.
You are
a
preached, baby.
Yeah, dude, everything backwards, man. I'm trying to work that into the bit, I swear. But you're obviously a student of the game. You have a lot of knowledge. You do your research. It
wasn't a purposeful. It was one of those. I literally suck at everything in life. Like and not to be like that, but honestly, like I've never been good at sports. I did not finish school. I suck at relationships. Like this was one thing that I just actually, I don't necessarily want to say it was good at, but like there's something there. You can feel it there. And I always wanted to do it, but it was like one of those things. I've told this story before. It felt like me telling my family and friends that I wanted to be like an astronaut or something, or a cowboy. It felt so frivolous, like that I was embarrassed to say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so then you go into your jobs of, okay, I'll do this and do that, and then the time just goes by super quick. And before I knew it, I still felt 16, and I was 35, 36.
Yeah.
And not knowing what the fuck I wanted to do. And then meanwhile having conversations with friends at work and stuff, and then, man, that was funny. What comic said that? And it's something that you just made up on the spot. And you hear that enough. And then on top of that, you see certain comedy and you're like, well, I could at least do that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That's what I did. I was like, I can do that, and I fucking did it. So fuck you.
You're just about to drop a
Insert
name
bully
right
name.
there. Yeah. So how long have you been doing it now?
3.5 years.
3.5 years.
Yeah.
When was the first time you went up? Like, what was that like? What made you take that plunge?
I got fired from a job. I felt I was going nowhere. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I had the girlfriend I have now. I had actually her and 2 other people. I had told them that comedy was my dream and I wanted to. And she's such a sweetheart. She's like, well, you should just do it. You got to do it. And of course, then I start flailing. And I just start flailing, and I'm like, well, no. And then she looks up on her phone, and she was, because I remember I walked up to Pickwick and Frolic once, walked up to the sign, there was somebody standing there, and I did some self-defeated, like, you won't have me here, will you? And then of course they said something like no, and then I walked away, and that was me trying comedy. And then so years later I told my girlfriend this, dream I wanted to do it, and I was like, well, I tried, and it's just nowhere to do it in Cleveland. And she got on her phone, Googled something, and 5 seconds later, Funny Stop has a competition, and there you go.
Yeah.
Did you win the first Funny Stop competition you did?
Yeah, I got into it right before. So my birthday is at the end of April. I called Funny Stop in March. I had my first set like a couple weeks before my birthday in April, and then I did okay. He didn't call my name, but Pete, I remember he walked up to me and he was like, "Come back next week." And then I came back, and then I was in the running for the contest. And you know how that goes. There's weeks and weeks and weeks. So finally, it was like finals, semifinals, wherever the fuck. And then by that June or whatever, I ended up winning the thing. And I was like, well, I'll be famous in 2 months.
Yeah. Crushing it.
A lot of it was beginners. My naiveness has helped me through a lot of shit. You know what I mean? Like me going in just like, well, I'll just sit here and think of some shit and go up. And I would never do that now. But I literally wrote that thing, performed it in my head. And the first time I performed it was that time. And it was like, oh. And then that became my special set that I never wanted to do. And I only ended up doing it a handful of times. But it was like a
baseball joke is so good.
Yeah.
You're great at like doing like nobody. I still struggle with public speaking, but you sound very natural and you are funny. So it's like you have a great combination there, and that's why you just hit the ground running. It seemed like.
Yeah, I think. Well, part of it too, like the service industry thing, being in the service industry. Like I've talked to Mary Santora. Shout out to super comic Mary Santora. I've talked to her about this because she worked in the service industry for years and being a bartender. And I was like, a lot of bartending, like you're talking to drunk people, you're trying to project your voice, you're trying to engage somebody. So a lot of that skill set is in there. And once again, it's just this. I think it was, it's the 40-year-old virgin. Once you finally get in there, you're like, well, I'm in it now, so let me stretch my feet out and see what we can do. Yeah. And I just, I mean, it's cliche, but I just want to be good, man. Like that's why, like, I love like Chris Rock shit. Like I love like Burr and Carlin and somebody who I never really mentioned that much, but who is a shit to me is like Patton Oswalt. Like his shit, it just goes. I could just listen to that dude talk, and he'll talk about relationships, or he'll talk about stuff, or with his wife recently dying, he'll talk about that. But especially like being a white dude, like certain white comics, or a lot of white comics, like with black comics, like of course sometimes our shit gets into like a fat comic or Amy Schumer. Amy Schumer's talking about sex again. Fat comics talking about being fat. Black comics, we talk about our experience being black, which I do that a lot. Yeah. But I like listening to Patton Oswalt, somebody like that, who's talking about something that isn't this shtick niche thing. I mean, yeah, he'll talk about certain comic book nerdiness stuff of being a nerd and shit like that. But I just like seeing people's process of pulling jokes out of somewhere that's not immediately obvious, and also not purposely obscure either. You're not talking about the atomic mass of some bullshit. You know what I mean? It's like the joke the guy had about, this different age difference. Just that seemed like a brand new joke. And we've probably heard age jokes in so many different ways, but that felt like a brand new premise. And I love listening to people who can do that, because then I start thinking like, well, how the fuck
you push yourself?
Yeah, it's like an Outkast album. When I used to listen to Outkast, as opposed to the other rap that was out at the time, like, how the fuck did they come up with this? I just love that. And not different for the sake of being different, but just like, everybody's over here. What the fuck are they doing over here?
They're doing what's real to them. And that resonates, man. It's that truthfulness that resonates.
That's why they blew up. Yeah.
Back to that, man. It always goes back to truth, man. John, I appreciate you being on the show. This has been a lot of fun.
Man.
We could do this for another hour, quite honestly.
Tell me Joe Rogan it up. We'll be here till 6.
Right. It'll be tomorrow. I've missed work. Let's all smoke weed and fucking let's do this.
Break out your astronaut diapers. We're gonna be here for a while.
John, where can we find you on social media?
I am at John Armstrong Comedy on Instagram and John Armstrong on Facebook, and I can't do Twitter just because I can't. I want to, but I can't.
It's not fun.
Oh God! It's just
It feels so contrived sometimes, but
well, that's the other thing. I didn't get on social media till after I started this comedy thing, which was relatively late, and I only did it for the comedy. And
it's a necessary evil.
There was so much stuff that once again my nice girlfriend had to walk me through because it would be some dumb political post, and then I'm like, that's not true, and I start like typing something. Just, John. No, this is how this thing is. Don't engage
feed
in
the
every.
Right. Ugh.
all right. Before we get into that,
Sorry.
because that's a whole other can of worms. Steve, you are
At Stephen Mers on Twitter, at Steve Mers, Instagram, Steve Mers, everywhere else.
Steve Mers in person.
Right.
I'm the David Horning on Instagram and Twitter. This has been You Can't Laugh at That. And if you're a comedian, I don't know, maybe there was something here that you could learn and work into jokes about your relationship. But no matter what it is, remember to get on stage, be truthful, be honest, and most of all, make people laugh. Because you can, in fact,
Bing.
laugh at that.
Yes.
Wait, you can?
You can.
Okay.
If you'd like to weigh in on today's topic, follow us on Twitter at You Can't Laugh Pod, or like us on Facebook at You Can't Laugh at That, and tell us how you did laugh at today's topic or how you didn't. This is all about the conversation, is what I'm saying. All right. Bye.